All right, so anyway, my name is Bob, alcoholic, compulsive overeater, and I want people to like me. I always start out that way, but it's really, really, really true. So anyway, oh, by the way, if you hear this on YouTube, you can come to our live meetings. They're on Tuesday and Sunday mornings at 7 a.m. I think you really like them, and after the talk, we have the shares. So it's Tuesday and Sunday mornings. All you have to do is put in the Zoom app 750-763-5506, 750-763-5506. In the description underneath, you'll see the information there. But anyway, to get started, I just wanted a little bit, always coming here and I'm talking about, spiritual awakening, about the food and all of these things. But let me tell you about this. I'll tell you a little bit about me personally. As a trade, I'm a registered pharmacist. And the thing is that in my life, I had all of these addictions with the problem with the food, with the alcohol, with the drugs. But mainly I want to talk about the food and just lay it all out here for everybody. The whole thing with the food is that we are inundated by the big corporations, the government, big pharma, the diet corporations, and the medical community and the lobbyists. What I'm saying by that is we don't have a chance. We have this addiction. It's like having drug pushers on every corner. When you turn on the TV, when you go on the internet, when you're driving down the highway, everywhere it's about the food and the fast food. But it's really interesting. In the 1950s and 60s, they had a thing called, like we have today, tobacco, cigarette smoking. It was very popular. But actually, 50% of the population in this country, United States, were addicted to tobacco. And they would have people from the medical profession actually coming on TV advertising it. So, but in 1963, the Surgeon General said how bad it was and things started to change. So why am I saying this? Maybe you can get an idea where I'm going with this, right? It's not too difficult to figure out. When we have these foods that are killing everybody in our country, killing us, our families, and the topic is the biggest epidemic in history. That's the topic for today. The biggest epidemic in history. So what's going on here? Why are these things all being advertised? Why even the big corporations, the government's in on it. The government subsidizes a lot of the unhealthy foods that are grown in our country and are given to people, the lunches and so forth. And the big drug companies are in on it, making the drugs the answer to the problem. As you can see here, I have some pills here, right? So like I said, I'm a pharmacist, but who do you think these pills are for? Why do you think they're here? Do you think it's just a collection of bottles I have? You may think that because right now I don't take any medication, I take zero. But just to get you to understand that all those pill bottles there, I had all the major diseases from being overweight and eating the wrong foods. Can you imagine that? I had all the major diseases, and everywhere I went, they gave me more and more pills, more and more bottles of pills. I had the heart disease. They wanted to put a stent in my heart. This is going back 15 years ago. And so, and I had the type 2 diabetes. I had the high blood pressure. I had all of these things. I went to my doctor recently, and I got he actually called me up and left a voicemail. I did a race. I wish I'd kept it. And he says, everything is perfect. And I'm on 0 medications now. So that's what this is all about. The amazing thing is that this is the craziness of what's going on here. That why these things are all legal, these poisons in the food and the types of foods and the way they're made scientists, they have what they call the bliss point. I have a whole bunch of articles here and everything, but I'm going to just tell you straight out. I put everything together for you. They call what they call the bliss point. The scientists, not only scientists, psychologists, they all sit down and they try to figure out what the best thing with the taste, the smell. They have people sitting there tasting it, smelling it, the texture of everything about the food, all had to do with the senses. They do everything to get us addicted and hooked on it. And that's what it's all about. It's all about the money. And also, the other thing too is to keep the food preserved. They put the chemicals. I have a list here. We go on many meetings. I go through with like 50 different chemicals. Hey, you don't have to take my word for it. When you go in the supermarket, pick something up, and it says 50 maybe 50 chemicals, 25 at least, right? All preserves, all enhancers. And what happens is that the food is 3 times the calories it's supposed to be. So if you buy a particular food and that's processed, it's called processed, it's going to have 3 times the calories. And you wonder why you're overweight and we get obese, and we get this in 3/4 of the country in this country here are weight and obese. It's called the SAD American diet. That's called the Standard American Diet SAD, or the modern American diet mad. So mad or sad, whatever you want to say. Hey, and the way we know this is, people say, hey, we got to do a lot of research to figure all this out, and everybody wants to figure everything out. No, the research is just go around the world and look on the internet and see where all the diseases are. Our country has all of these major diseases. That brings up another thing. A lot of people say, well, you have to be, in order to afford to eat healthy, you have to have, be well off or spend a lot of money or whatever. That's not true. And you go around the world, some of the poorest nations that eat just basic foods from the ground are the healthiest, right? They don't have the heart disease. Like we have this heart disease, we have the strokes, we have the cancers, the high blood pressure causes all the major diseases from kidney diseases and all of these different things. And oh, by the way, when I had my education, right, and when I became a registered pharmacist, and nowhere did it tell me about, it was all about the medications. All the big pharmaceutical corporations, they control a lot of the education. Even now, I have to do continuing education. A lot of it's sponsored. When I worked in different hospitals and different organizations, it was sponsored by different manufacturers, right? So we had that from there. Not only that, the government, this is the most amazing thing. It's not only that, the government, a lot of the people, we have lobbyists, but a lot of people on these food administration parts of the government are part of, from the corporations, and they're allied with the corporations. Almost all of them are. So again, we don't have a chance. This whole thing is so insane and crazy. It's insanity. Let me tell you what happened with me. So anyway, like I said, when I was educated, I didn't know, all about, like, maybe the food would be thy medicine. Hippocrates said that. He said, medicine be thy food, food be thy medicine. So I went to, actually it was a meeting, it was an Overeat Anonymous meeting, and I went there. And a guy there, he had lost some weight. And I had gone there because I started to get the type 2 diabetes, the high blood pressure, and all of these different ailments and stuff. And I didn't believe him, even though I was medically trained, had this education for years. And the guy said to me, he said, Bob, all these things will go away if you just lose the weight and you eat healthy. But anyway, so I really didn't believe it. But anyway, when I ate healthy, started going away. Actually, let me tell you this. Here's a crazy thing. I have like 4 blood pressure machines, okay? And the reason why is because I had very high blood pressure. It was like, if anybody wants to know, it was like 195 over 90. It was like 95. It was very, very high. My pulse rate was extremely high, whatever. I had started to have these heart problems. And this is going back, I'm 70 years old now, and I'm not taking, like I said, any medications, nothing. And here over here, you can see, these are some of them. I figured I years ago when I had the medications, I said, let me save some of them so people could see. They're for all those ailments, the high blood pressure, heart disease, right? For the cholesterol, for all, like, there were like a ton of other ailments. I had, actually my skin became rosacea. I had a lot of intestinal ailments, the GERD, the gastric reflux disease, the all kinds of stuff, constipation, all of these things that I had. I probably more that I didn't even think. So my skin was now it's just so different. It's just different. That was like dry and it just a change. So anyway, so what happened was I started to eat healthy, really healthy, lose the weight, and I started to take my blood pressure. And in very short time, I'm telling you, people don't realize how short a time when you start eating healthy, start losing some of the weight. My blood pressure started going down. Then all of a sudden, I was looking at the blood pressure, and the blood pressure was like a teenager. It was really like, it was like 110 over 70. It got 107 over 70. If you don't know, that's very, very healthy blood pressure. And here's a guy, I was on 2 and 3 medications for blood pressure. And here I am, I'm finally getting off of it, and I'm having this low blood pressure. So I called the manufacturer, I've got other machines, they all said the same things. Went to the doctor's office, all said the same thing. So here it is, what happened was my blood pressure became totally normal. Another thing was my cholesterol. I don't know if you know about cholesterol levels, like 330, right? Now it's like 127 because of the type of foods I eat. 127. So the problem I was having, I go to sometimes these offices, the specialists, and have these, like I was going, since then I very rarely go. There's nothing to go for, but I was going to all of these doctors and everything, and then I go in there, and they would send me for all of these other tests because they looked at the lab values, and they actually they sent me for tests for HIV, you know, for AIDS, and all of these different things, because the blood, they weren't used to these results. It was so healthy, and they showed, and I had lost the weight. So between all of that, they just couldn't get in their minds. Look, the whole thing is this, and I'm, like I said, I'm a pharmacist, but we're always like told and educated that, hey, look, when you get older, you're going to have these chronic diseases, chronic blood pressure, chronic type 2 diabetes. Hey, by the way, type 2 diabetes used to be called maturity onset diabetes, right? And that was because young people didn't get it. But now, because of our diet, they all get it. So, I mean, there's so much evidence that the diet, just like there was with the cigarette smoking. But has it ever sunk into our government or the people, or understand, even the medical profession, you know? They're very, it's called allopathic, meaning that it's all about drugs and surgery. We do have homeopathic remedies, and these osteopathic doctors are taught more homeopathic, meaning more about the whole body and the whole system. Hey, look, my understanding, what I see is the body will heal itself. The body knows what to do. If you just give it the right gasoline, you know, if you put like jet fuel in your car and you wonder why it's sputtering and not working right. You know, so we overwhelm our bodies with this food that was the food of kings and queens, right? We can get today, almost everybody can eat this high saturated, highly fat, and today it's even worse because it's hydrogenated foods, all these additives. You know, so we have this illness and this sickness. Oh, by the way, I'm just going to say, as I usually do, I'm not going to leave you hanging like how terrible and understanding, which it is really bad, this disease is. We'll get into like a little bit of the, like I always do with the solution on a different level. You know, usually we talk about we attack it from a spiritual angle here, but I'm going to get more, for people coming in and wanting to hear this on a different perspectives. And but it's that change of thinking. Look, the diets don't work. Do you realize, I always say that, but here's the medical reason. I always say because they're trying to control it. But do you realize what's the food that the diet companies give you? You have all of these companies, they send you the food, they're billion-dollar industries, and it has all the poisons in it. So you're wondering, you're just getting smaller portions of the poison. So how are you gonna resolve it? Here you weren't even happy with the bigger portions, and now you're getting the smaller portions. By the way, when they sit there, and I said those scientists in the medical profession, what they do is, and the psychologists, they look for stuff that's addictive, more addictive than cocaine and heroin. I always say people who, when I work in 12-step programs, who are addicted to all these other things like drugs, white powder, just like the white sugar, they said the food is much more difficult. But it's like designer, they have what they call designer drugs. Well, we have designer food. Do you realize the insanity? I mean, when I'm saying all this, does it really sink in that the insanity of where we're living? It's just like people were smoking the cigarettes and nobody, they had it on TV, how great it was, and then they have a doctor on TV, look, this whole craziness going on with this whole society with the food, but we are killing ourselves and our families. We're doing that, but we can't help it. We have been totally inundated and brainwashed. And again, it's big corporations, it's government, it's the diet companies, the medical profession, the lobbyists, right? We don't have a chance. So the thing is this, that there is a way out, but we have to understand with the nature of the disease and what they're putting in the foods. So let me tell you what I do. I already told you about all these medications that I used to be on. Again, 0 medications. Do you understand that? I was on up to 10 medications. And each medication, again, I'm a pharmacist, each medication causes other problems, right? And I was trained that the answer is the medications, right? The body is so miraculous. The body, here's an example. When you get a cut, right, do you ever look at it? It's like magic. It heals itself, right? You take it for granted, but do you ever think of the magic in all of that? In the magic of looking at a cut or something and it's just really healing on its own? And the problem is that the food is the thing that's the poison in the food. So when you start to see that the food is the problem, then we can do a solution. But until now, we never realized that, hey, when my kids were young, what did I give them? The Pop-Tarts and all of this food. I didn't have a comprehension. I'm medically trained, but I didn't know that. I thought, oh, it's a bunch of baloney, this stuff with, eating like Popeye with his spinach or an apple a day. Believe me, it's true. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. Look at everybody around you, yourselves, and the sickness and illnesses that we're all getting here in this country, and the problems we're having, right? It's all due to this terrible food. They make all these foods with, I get a list here of all these hydrogenated oils I told you about, all of these things, the synthetic sugars. So what I do is I eat one ingredient in the foods. 95% of food in a supermarket I can't eat. But by doing that, I can't eat enough. I give you a challenge here. If you eat very wholesome, one ingredient in the food, because all the calories are in the sauces. You go to a restaurant, it's all in the sauces, the oil, sugar. They call it SOS, salt, oil, and sugar. Salt, oil, and sugar, right? And flour, anything processed. But if you eat a whole natural food, then the whole thing is different, because that has 1/3 the calories. So you can't eat enough all day long. You could try to eat, but you can't eat enough food to get over this addiction. So anyway, the whole thing is this, that again, the corporations, big pharma, the government, the diet. Here's what I wanted to say, and I was talking about the poor diets. In poorer countries, and if I didn't mention this already, they have a better diet than we have here. And what is more important in our health? So, okay, but anyway, let me get a little bit to the solution. Okay, one of the things is this. When we have this change of eating, it takes a while. Look, anytime, like a drug addict, which we are, we're food addicts. Some of us also have the problem with drugs and food and the compulsion to eat. It's never enough. But there is a period of detox. So if you're addicted to sugar, and there's a period where you have to get over, or sugar or the oil. It sometimes takes a month, 3 months, but eventually it becomes. So we were brainwashed into thinking the normal thing and getting addicted was to be, this food is going to bring us to happiness and joy. And a lot of the other meetings, and if you go on YouTube, you'll see a lot of the meetings there are all about a lot of the spirituality, to change your perception towards the food. But I want to get just mainly down to a little bit more of the basic thing about the addiction itself, as far as, going and people try to detox. And there is a period, but after that, the food then tastes so good, because what happened was our palates became totally clogged up with the sugar, the oil, and we became gooped up with all this goopy food. So we couldn't even taste it anymore. And just like an addict, here's the thing, like being an addict. An addict, you always need more and more and more and more, right? You need more of your addictive stuff, because you're depending on that, because the receptors in the brain, after a while, they can't give the feedback anymore, so you got to give more and more and more of this addictive food to the brain. So, but after a while, it just becomes where, when we get off of it and we see there's a better way, when we don't, look, because the addiction is enslaving us. It's making our lives miserable. You ever see, you know about drug addicts or alcoholics? Their life is about the drug and the alcohol, and we sit there and say, hey, look at them. This guy's hooked on cocaine, and our country puts him in jail for years, or I don't know, whatever they do, or they make it illegal, very hard for a person to get these drugs, right? Maybe a little bit with the food, like they tax cigarettes or something. No, what they do with the food is they subsidize it. The government's paying money to the companies to produce more of this food that's really bad. So do we want to be a slave in our life to the corporations? Do we want them to kill us? That's what our families. But there is a way out. It's because once you get into a normal way of eating, your mind straightens out. Physiologically, you get a full feeling, because these things they put in the medications are directly in there to do just the opposite. They're directly put in there so you don't feel, these full feelings or anything like that. So what happens is that as we go along and we have that change of perception, change of eating habits, it's called the normal one. We got to realize how crazy and abnormal our thinking was, and again, being brainwashed. So I don't want to be a slave to what hey, look, on TV, they play these, it's like going home, eating good food, or they play the song, the music, and it's like a siren song, but it's all going to take us away from it takes our health away. Psychologically, we're a mess from all the sugar, the high, the low blood pressure. Physically, we're going to die younger. We're miserable because of our addiction. But it becomes our lives become all about the food. So we had to have that change of thinking where we started to turn around and see things differently. You know, I saw something on TV years ago, and it really struck me. Here was a situation, and it's related to, you know, our society's attitude towards drugs. But here, so there was this famous celebrity. He was on the TV, and he was like they do. Some of these celebrities are in or out of jail. They're bringing them to court because they say they should have a higher example. They should show, you know, not be on these drugs that they're taking. And meanwhile, this guy was very successful. He happened to be an athlete, and he was doing his career successfully. So I'm not going to say whether drugs should be legal or shouldn't be illegal, but what I'm saying is this, is that when he was being interviewed, the guy there said, hey, look, you know, this is what I like to do. He says, look, rather than you going out and thinking of these drugs, and why don't you come to me? We'll go to this place where they have great ice creams. The guy was actually, he was very heavy, and he looked very unhealthy, and he wasn't that old. He says, I'll take you there, and, you know, we can enjoy an ice cream together, an ice cream sundae. So I'm sitting there saying to myself, this is our country. We're going to go and enjoy all of this, and they're looking at all these other people on their drugs and what they're doing. But, you know, a lot of people, unfortunately, die from alcoholism and drug addiction. But what do you think it is compared to the food addiction? That's why I say it's the biggest epidemic in history. Do you realize most all these strokes, heart attacks, a lot of the cancers, and all of these different things are, and they all relate to the type 2. Hey, look. The type 2 diabetes causes all the other diseases in our life. Do you realize that? When when you read about type 2 diabetes, kidney disease, the blindness, all of these things, but the blood particular sugar, when it gets high like that, it causes all these problems. And then he said it's insulin resistance. Look, I'm telling you, when you eat healthy and you eat the right foods, in most cases, you know, I was convinced that it was my pancreas that couldn't secrete enough insulin. But I realized that's not true at all because, again, just like I told you about the blood pressure machine, I had to go buy a lot to test my blood sugar levels. I bought like 3 different things because I had over 200, and so I was type 2 diabetic. I was on 2 medications. I want to say something else before I forget this stuff. Look, I say I'm a pharmacist. I see thousands of profiles of people on medication. Do you realize, and I'm not even getting into the psychological. Let me tell you about the physical. It just never ends. They always start on the oral hypoglycemic medications, and then before you know it always goes to the injection with the insulins and all these things you see, you know, on TV and how glorious it is and how it'd be life-changing. And then they say even these medications will cause you to lose weight. But you want to know something? A lot of them are, in a way, they're poisoning the body, and that's how you lose the weight. Look, I want to say this and be right up front right now. I'm not saying that if you need some medications and not important, you shouldn't take them. But be aware that the lifestyle change will just immensely, in my case, I told you, see the medications behind me, all these medications, right? I was on all of them. I'm on 0 now. I'll keep on saying because I know some people came in late. 0 medications. Okay, my lab values, everything was perfect. I went to the doctor last time. He left me a voicemail. I accidentally got erased. I want to keep it just as though he said, "Mr. Rothman, your everything is fine. It's great and everything." He said, "Don't even bother coming in." You know, so here it is. Here's a guy who was very sick. I was sick. Had all those major diseases. I'll say it again: the blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, heart disease. They wanted to put a stent in my heart. I mean, now it's perfect. This is years ago. And I'm here. I'm 70 years old. I'm here to tell you the good news that, you know, the good news, as they say, is that we have a way out of this mess. If you come to these meetings, we talk about that perception change. Again, I talked about the billion-dollar diet industry. They can't help you. They're sending you little portions of food that has all the poison in it. You know, so you're going to starve some more. Hey, look, you could do that for a year, a month, be miserable. But eventually you're going to go back. And the way we know is, and everybody knows here, 95% of it is true. So if you come to these meetings, we have what's called a mind-altering, a new design for living, way of living, which is totally different, which you'll have an understanding and comprehension of. And it'll be that shift in thinking where we look at, I'll just touch upon it because I really wanted to talk about all this stuff with the food, this other stuff. But here, the clarity with the water. You know, this alone, change your perception towards food, having this rather than those big gloopy drinks that have 1,500, I don't know, calories in them, crazy stuff like that. I got here an orange. This is from God. Can you imagine that? Look at this. Look at this. This isn't synthetic. This is made in nature. It has all the fiber and the natural health, and people get healthy. Vitamin C, right? And an apple a day. Look, all of these fables. Hey, even look, hey, I'm going to tell you something. Popeye, right? You know, with the spinach. The greens. Do you realize greens have 1,000 different vitamins and micronutrients in them? When you buy a vitamin store, it has a few vitamins, all synthetic. You know, all these foods have healthy things, and our body knows what to do with them. But, you know, when we put too much food in our body, and especially, you know, in a lot of countries, all the protein, right? Some countries, they put a little bit in the food, and they have other grains from the ground and all this healthy stuff. But we take it upon ourselves to eat all of this protein, and it has hormones in it. Again, the poisons aren't only in the food in the supermarket. They put the poisons in when they feed the animals. They have to feed them the hormones to make them grow bigger, better. You know, then you have all the milk industry, the cheese industry, and what they do to the foods. Look, this is the thing here. We were meant to eat a certain way and be healthy and be a certain weight. But again, we're victims. We're victims. When you realize you're a victim, do you want to be a victim and a slave? Is that what you want to be? Do you want to be a slave to these corporations and what they're putting on and what they're doing? So there is a way out. And I was telling you, we do have these meetings here where we talk about it. It has to be that shift where you see food differently. But I want to say, to keep it on a different plane here, that you do have that detox period where you were brainwashed and the foods are part of your body, part of, you know, the endorphins in your body and the dopamine. Hey, look, it's like heroin. These drugs come in and they play with the chemicals in your body. So then when someone tries to get off heroin or cocaine or drugs or alcohol, the body can't handle it because the whole chemistry was upset. The whole chemistry in our bodies is upset now. It's upset, but we can detox. We can get over that period, start eating healthy. And on these meetings, we talk about that design for living. Look, this whole thing, and there's only one way out, it's that perception change. Because if you try to resist it, which diets do, and you resist it your whole life, you're going to end up, you know, it's not going to work. And, you know, the other thing, too, is when people get down, look, here's another problem with dieting, that they don't work. Suppose you get down to your goal weight and you're walking around and you struggle for a year and you've been miserable every day, and then all of a sudden you walk around and you say, well, okay, I feel like I'm at the weight I should be. It's not so great. You know, it's like winning a lottery. You feel happy for a little while and then you're not happy. So unless you have the perception change where healthy foods, where you have a plate full of healthy food, healthy grains, healthy stuff, and not all this oil, sugar, and salt on it, when that happens, the perception changes there and you start to see things in life differently. It all turns around in your life, and then you look at it differently. You don't have to struggle anymore. You don't have to fight it anymore. That's the only answer. Otherwise, you know, 95% of it fails, and the other 5% people who succeed in dieting, quote, dieting, the way the billion-dollar industry that you pay thousands of dollars portray it is, they're miserable anyway. So they might as well go out and eat. They're so miserable. I gotta say, look, we have a better way here. I got here papers and papers and pages of stuff on the internet, but I'm distilling it down to one thing here. We're being brainwashed. We could change our perception, our thinking towards food. We do that here on the program through a 12-step program. We have that perception change. It has to do with drugs, alcohol, and people just don't understand this is an addiction. They don't understand, but this addiction is worse than the drugs and alcohol. Like, yeah, a lot of people die from drugs and alcohol, but again. Not only that, the lifestyle. You know, when people are addicted to drugs, they may not die, but their lifestyles are miserable. But how miserable is your lifestyle? Do you realize how psychologically it affects your brain? And again, all the medications and drugs, you go from one drug to another, even the psychological ones, right? I'm not telling you not to take medications. They help in a lot of cases, but I'm saying this. I am a pharmacist and I see profiles, thousands of them, and people come in when I work at different places in the hospitals or in the retail communities, and I see they come in and it's from one medication to another, psychologically, physically. The body is so strong. It's strong that it'll overcome them, and you know, you'll feel it. But again, a lot of these things, look, antibiotics, there's a lot of medications. I'm not saying anybody it's not, and that you need them. But in a lot of cases, when the change perception, thinking towards the food, but even when I was on medications, I came in, I was addicted to drugs, alcohol, besides the food, right? So I came in, I had all these psychological problems. A lot of medications too, they give me because my thinking was off. I was depressed, I was anxious, and a lot of you know who are here. But the perception changed when I work this program and I see life differently. Again, I'm so happy. I don't want to, look, if you were to give me some kind of medication that said, okay, it's going to make me feel good, it's not going to make me feel good because there's nothing as good as a natural high. Do you follow that? I needed drugs. I needed the alcohol because I was so miserable. And we go into reasons why we're miserable. We expect life to be a certain way, and it doesn't meet our expectations. So if you come to these meetings, you'll have that, what we call a spiritual awakening. But the whole thing is this. My mind and my thinking was so off, and my perception towards food, towards life, that those things seem good, the extra food. You know, we talk about, you know, being gluttonous, that's the food, or lust, or all these things in our life, you know. But basically, I'm just sticking with the real addiction here to the food, and understanding that once we get this, so if I see, look, when I go to supermarket, even there's some what they call healthy places, that these supermarkets that they're chains, and they say, well, we have all healthy whole foods here, right? But when you go to this salad bar, it has salt, oil, and sugar in it. Salt, oil, and sugar, all poisons and all the other chemicals, ingredients, preservatives, but it's 3 times the calories. So if I have a plate of grains, say beans and rice, and it's so delicious, you know, or the fruit like I showed, you know, it's not processed. It's all natural. Even juice, when you juice something, it becomes processed. You know, sugar is from a natural plant, but when you process it by taking the sugar out, it's a tremendous amount of calories. And also, it has to do with not only the sugar, but the oils. The oils when they take them out of foods, the same way. The oils that do the same thing. The oil is concentrated. A tablespoon of oil will have 150 calories in it. So here it is. It's all processed food. And that's where the problem is. So the whole thing is this is the biggest epidemic in history, but people don't look at it that way. You know, it's like so accepted because there's money involved. It has to do with big business, big corporations. The government's involved. They subsidize all of these places, and it all has to do with the lobbyists. And so do we want to be free? Or do we want to be going around? You know, again, it's related in our history to tobacco. When tobacco, it's crazy. 50% of the country smoked tobacco. Most of the community in the 50s and early 60s says, oh, it's fine. They go on TV, and it wasn't a problem. What, that ashtrays in every car, everywhere you'd go. You know, even medical people went on TV, said it was good for your throat, right? It all had to do with the corporations and money. But this is, you know how devastating you think that is? This is much worse. This situation is much worse. This is a situation here where more people, do you realize all those major diseases, they're coming around because of the food. When you have high blood pressure, the type 2 diabetes, so all of these things are related to the addiction to the food. So anyway, the whole key is this, that there is a way out, changing that perception, start eating healthy. And once you do that, you wouldn't want all of this. And when you started to, the things that I'm talking about, and again, what we do here is this whole thing with the meetings. I mean, people have been coming here, maybe some people are new here, is that perception change towards, but we also deal with a lot of life situations, because like I said, a lot of medications I was taking all had to do with the thinking, right? I don't need that anymore. I don't need I don't need the diet corporations. I don't need anything. I have that natural feeling towards the food. Normal, we get to a point of normalcy, right? It changes, it shifts when we have that natural feeling and understanding, you know, not, again, the corporations, the TV, the advertisements, they all brainwashing us into thinking that is because, you know, again, allopathic medicine. So let me just say this. Allopathic medicine has to do with surgery and medications. That's the way the medical community, again, when I went to school for pharmacy, we were taught, again, the major drug companies were doing they were connected to all the education. But there's also homeopathy and osteopathy. These are fields in understanding where the comprehension is that the body as a whole takes care of itself. Which, again, I use that example. If you get a cut, it's miraculous the way it heals, right? Your body can heal itself if we get out of its way. If we just, you know, the bad gasoline we put in our car, again, it is very indicative in a lot of countries around the world now. You know, one other interesting thing, and then we'll go to the shares and quickly say, there are countries around the world where people are eating foods that people say, well, certain carbohydrate food you shouldn't eat that. But they're very thin when you look at them in the culture because they don't have all that additives. It's not so much they say this food or that food, it's the additives that are the problem that they're putting in to get us addicted. So, but a lot of countries now are developing all these diseases since the big food chains come in, you know, all the fast food chains. And it turns out in some of these countries, they had a propensity for heart disease and type 2 diabetes, more so than even here in this country. It's just the way it was genetically. And they're getting it more and more. But when they were eating healthy, they had none of that, even though they had a propensity towards it. So anyway, I just want to say, if you want to come to these Zoom meetings, they're here 7 a.m. Sundays and Tuesdays. You're more than welcome to come here. You'll see you see this on YouTube, and in the description, the meeting number is 750-763-5506. So you'll be able to hear this, and you'll hear the shares after.